Hi, welcome to my channel where we provide an alternative view to the common narrative. Today I would like to talk about the military conflict between the Russian and the Ukrainian forces on the contact line. Now, I've listened many times to Scott Ritter and Colonel McGregor, and well, I do respect their views. But I sometimes, especially Scott Ritter, he likes to talk a nice story and he's a good narrator and it gets excited and emotional and it's fun to listen to him. But I believe sometimes the story gets skewed. Now, I've also read some articles about Simplicity the Thinker. He's on Substack. And he usually does good military analysis of certain events. And I read through his one article. In this one article, the Russians have executed an armored attack on a certain Ukrainian front. You can see it from a video, a UIV picture and so on. And I believe it was a Ukrainian UIV who did it. And apparently the Ukrainians are using that as a poor exercise of the Russians, and that they have destroyed many vehicles of the Russian column. And I looked at this, and he actually started off with a whole story about how the fields look like. It's very much like Normandy, you know, it's say cornfields or whatever. Nicely squared and then surrounded by thick bushing or trees. And from a farming point of view, I know what the reason is to protect the crop against wind, gusts and destruction. So you do your hectares, your couple of hectares, and you surround them with trees to protect them. And that is precisely how the Ukrainian front looks like. I'm sure you have seen many videos where on YouTube and on Telegram where both Ukraine and Russia are claiming that they destroyed tanks and armored vehicles and so on. And you know more or less the terrain that is applicable to the war going on there. Now, in this military or armored assault by the Russians was in the region of Advieka. That is one of the hot points at this stage. The Donbass city or the next city is still being bombarded by Advieka. Or so, yeah. All right. Any case, so I'm amazed that after 16 months that the Russians are finally trying to attack in this area and stop the whole bombardment of the next city. No, that's 60 or 40 months. Man, I'm not going to count that. Any case. And what is this? An open field. And it is in the front of the column. There are about 6 tanks. I can't put T-70s or 72s or T-9s. I don't know. Doesn't matter. And behind them there are a number of BMCs or whatever they call it. Troop carriers or armored troop carriers or type like a Bradley fighting vehicle type of thing. APC we call them. So apparently the objective of the Russians was to occupy the sludge heap. Advieka apparently has a big quarry and so on. The Ukrainians were occupying the sludge heap, and it's supposed if the Russians can take it, it will give a good observation point and a fire control over the rest of the valley because you can see quite far and so on. And that is why the Russians wanted to attack it and then occupy it. Now, just for the sakes, there came an article out that the Russians did conquer that sludge heap and they are now occupying that sludge heap. So they achieved their objective. But I looked at this thing. What it is actually is that it was an open field. There were about 4 or 5 tanks that came down the road. Or in the field. I think it was in front there was a mine clearing tank, then 5 normal tanks, T-70s, T-9, I don't know, and behind them a number of APCs. I know BTRs or whatever they are called, I don't know. We call them APCs. In any case, and they were going on, and then they went up to the tree line, and then they made a U-turn, the tanks, and they were slowly moving backwards. And when they moved backwards, the APCs, BTRs, whatever, they offloaded the personnel, and then they ran into the wood. And then BTRs continued with the round trip. And yes, it was a UAV from the Ukrainians. And the Ukrainians did some video cutting and stuff like that, and claimed that a number of these tanks and armor was destroyed and so on. And Simplicity actually pointed out, no, it wasn't true. There were only a few number of these APCs, BTRs, whatever, destroyed, but all the people got out, so there was no damage of killing, except maybe for the driver. And but he says, Simplicity said it's a good military maneuver. Now, according to all these articles, he must be some other military expert or general or officer or whatever, because he talks a lot about these things. And I do respect his view. But I couldn't understand why. Anything that I saw makes no sense. And I wanted to show you actually the video, and I thought to myself, okay, let's go on YouTube. Maybe I can find this video because it's a Ukrainian video, but I couldn't find it. And I found a lot of other videos where the Ukrainians claim to have destroyed Russian tanks and so on, and a huge number of Russian tanks. And I watched the same scenery there going off. 2 tanks in the middle of a field, 1 tank, 2 tanks driving down the road, isolated. I don't know, I really don't know what their purpose was, what was their objective. I really don't know why do you send a single or 2 tanks onto a road, driving down the road, being easy targets for any anti-tank weapon, although the Ukrainians always claim these tanks were destroyed by artillery, but the funny thing is that artillery is a random or an area weapon, not a precision weapon, although yes, you get some precision ammunition, but it's not that they have pinpoint accuracy of a static item, not on a moving target. But that's it. Oh yeah, and then so the Ukrainians, they have these small UAVs, the quadcopters. They're not very big. They show you that, and then they take this huge, huge anti-tank round. And now, with that thing, they are destroying Russian tanks. But the propeller sizes on these things are this size. Not much, this size. They don't even, I don't understand, if this thing is not a shell, as a plastic shell or something like that, that copter won't be able to pick it up. I mean, come on. 4 or 5 propellers of this size doesn't have the lift power to do that. But in any case, so camera on top, and they're targeting just like what's his kamikaze of the Russians. Man, those deadly things. I mean, that is proper weapons that destroy tanks. Boom. But according to these videos, the UAV, the small UAV with this big bomb is going into a tank, and then they blow it up as if it was like a 500 kilogram explosion. I'm digressing again. But the point is that when the Ukrainians planned their counteroffensive, what was the constant arguments presented by Scott Ritter and Colonel McDouglas, McGregor, and so on? It is all about combined military actions, meaning helicopters, aircrafts, artillery, armor, troop movements. That is how you attack a position. Is that not how it's supposed to be done? Why would a Russian armored column of 5 to 6 tanks and 5 to 6 armored vehicles go open field, okay, all along the one tree line, approached a barrier tree line, make a U-turn, a big U-turn circle. It's not that like so, a big U-turn. Offload the troops into the forest line, and then move back. No air support, no helicopter support, no artillery support, nada, nothing. In broad daylight. And then somebody calls it a good Russian military maneuver. I don't know. The purpose clearly was to offload these troops in order for them to go onto the sludge heap. But the Ukrainians could see them from a UAV. The Ukrainians could have fired on them by artillery pieces, which they claimed to do and destroyed some of them. They could have been in range of some, while they were in range, looks like it, of anti-armor missiles. It was in broad daylight. For what purpose? In my opinion, no, 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 no. Firstly, you know the Ukrainians have night vision, but you don't know how much they have. And the front is long, it's more than 1,000 kilometers. So they have a lack of equipment. So what you do is you do it at night. You don't do it during the day. Forget about it. Yes, if they have infrared, sure, they will pick it up. But if they see you in the daylight, they will pick you up in any case. So the question is, it will always be better to err on the wrong side. Maybe you have an advantage. So you do it at night. Then you have an air superiority. Okay. Call it an air superiority. The front line is long. A lot of air defense systems of Ukrainians have been destroyed. You don't know if they still have, but you can send up a MiG-30 or whatever, fly high, test if there's a air defense system or not, and then you can send some of the helicopters in. Or if you don't, I don't believe helicopters these days, but they still have a function. If you use them right, it's still alright. And then you don't send an armored column. Then you send the men down, buy food, walking, all down the forest or the hedges, or whatever you want to call it, under the protection of these hedges, up to a certain point where you can't go any further, where you then have to maybe cross open ground and so on. And then when you reach an open ground, then you can bombard the defensive lines of Ukraine, and then you storm over the open place. But it wasn't really necessary because the tree lines were, and there was enough cover. And this is how, in my opinion, how you should have done it. Because that's what we're talking about, combined maneuvering. Now you expose 6 tanks and 6 APCs, PTRs, whatever. And you're giving them, the Ukraine, some lack of target practice. Why? And the Russians have done it several times, because they have several times attacked the Ukrainian position at Vyevka, which is heavily defended due to heavily fortifications, and they have been driven back several times. So, in my opinion, the Russians have lost significant hardware, armor, and men in the attack on Vyevka. Same with Bakhmut. The kill ratio on the Prigozhin's bunch was 3-1, where the usual one is 10-1. And in a similar matter, the Russians have advanced, or they have contact points, I think 5 or 6 places along the contact line. They have actions. They have intensified the actions and the attacks on the Ukrainian forces. And I also know in Kupiansk and so on. Why? If you are not intended to go and just break through the Ukrainian lines, defensive lines, with a major attack, Why are you even sacrificing your men and equipment on achieving trivial type of advancement? I thought the Russians are not concerned about how much ground they occupy. So why do you advance 500 meters so-called on a day? What's the point? You know, when I think about this, I have to think really about the Russian commanders and the Russian military nurse. And then I've got to start believing what the Western pundits are saying. Because in my opinion, they are strong on. They are fucking it up. Getting men killed unnecessarily. And they are losing tanks. Don't make a mistake. They're not saying it, but come on, people. The Russians are losing armor. And that when they lose armor, they lose manpower. Yes, you can see a lot of videos where the crew and so on escape, but still. So I have to rethink about the Russian commanders and what their objectives are. In my opinion, you don't sacrifice your people, even for strategic points of this nature. For more than a year now, they have established defensive lines and let the Ukrainians attack, and they have grinded the forces of Ukraine down. And now they are doing the same mistake, attacking Ukrainians without real strategic benefits and getting their armor destroyed and people killed and raising the morale of the Ukrainians. You know, Judge Napolitano had an interview with Matthew McBride. He's an American that has volunteered to fight in Ukraine for the Ukrainian army. And it is a principle that is what he's fighting for, although it might be a little bit distorted, but he's doing it for the right reason, and I respect him for that. And he answered a lot of questions about the Ukrainian forces. And he stated clearly, there's more than enough young men walking around Ukraine to fill up the ranks. Ukraine has no shortage of military soldiers. That's fallacy. That's just daydreaming. Scott Ritter and McGregor are dreaming of when they get to these things. Really. They haven't got a clue what they're talking about. And the guys are eager to fight. And yes, they are disappointed with the counteroffensive and so on, but they have learned and they've adapted. The Ukrainians are not a walkover. In spite of what most of the people are trying to say. You know, there's a tank on that side that can kill you. There's a man with a rifle that can kill you. As long as those people are there, you can be killed. Make no mistake. It is not a child's game. There's death, killed or be killed. Kill or be killed. That's the rule of the game. Now, I've read a number of statements of Russian soldiers that went to the front and so on, volunteer. They didn't see much action, which is typical. But these attacks by the Russians, no. And now I can understand that a lot of these maneuvers that, at the beginning of the SMO, the Russians faked it. No, it's not serious now. Oh, excuses were made for the Russian army. No, they were purely defeated in those respects. They had to retreat. The commanders made stupid mistakes. They were not up to the game. The Russian commanders are just inexperienced as the Ukrainians are. I mean, in today's wars, the most important thing is the technology. And the most important thing is UAVs, counter to what everybody's saying. I mean, for me, any company should have at least 2 UAVs. They should have the Russians should have something like a Predator. I think they have one. Flying high, observing the field. So if my forces attack, then I can pinpoint where the defensive lines are, where they come from. And I would have instructed my counter-battery fire to in that positions. That is the whole point of UAVs. Observe the fire positions of the enemy so that you can take them out with your artillery fire. But no, it's not being done like that. Well, you don't have the Pelican, so what? Then you have this. UAVs. If I was a commander, my UAVs would have flooded those those skylines. Constantly, in the air. But the Russians are not doing it. But what we are being told about the war and so on, that is the fantasy. War is, I know it's not the Second World War where massive armies are involved and so on, but at least you don't do maneuvers on this basis. And like I said, I thought maneuvering bases, you had mobility, aviation, combined forces, UIV, satellite information, all intelligence networks. No. Every time I see it's not being used, or it doesn't make sense for me. So don't ask me and say the Russians are supermen or so, or they've got a lot of weapon systems. That is what they have. They have an oversupply of tanks and artillery and ammunition and so on. But are they any way cleverer than the Ukrainians? No. Are they any more capable than the Ukrainians? No. When I sort of studied these pictures and these images and so on, and it's not Ukrainian propaganda. I'm not looking at that. I'm just looking at the terrain and the attack, especially this attack, which, I don't know. If I was the commander, nope, no. In any case, this is my story for today. Until next time, cheers.